no one in the squad is prepared to vote for McCarthy to be chair. And even some blue dogs are like, unless we get anything, who knows, though. But here is AOC on Jake Tapper's show. To be clear, what happened was the Senate passed a continuing resolution for 45 days that had just about everything that they wanted, except for Ukraine aid. It went over to the House. It passed with a majority of the votes coming from Democrats. And the continuing resolution basically will just punt for 45 days. And broadly, it seems like Democrats in the Senate and in the House and Republicans in both the Senate and the House think that the Ukraine aid is going to be added in its standalone bill over the next 2 or 3 weeks. But here is AOC.
What's your take on what just happened, on the threat of a government shutdown and just the whole experience?
Well, I think the Republican Party right now is completely out of step with the American people. And what we saw today and what we saw this week leading up to this final hour, compromise, not even a compromise, but really capitulation by the Republican Party, we saw them go through every single possible iteration of cutting benefits. They tried to cut across the board 30% of the budgets of critical agencies like the Social Security Administration. They voted, some of the most moderate members, quote unquote, moderate members of the Republican Party, casted votes for things like 80% cuts under the Department of Education to low-income schools. This is not a moderate party, period. There are not moderates in the Republican Party. There are just different degrees of fealty to Donald Trump, but it starts with a lot of fealty, and then it goes to extreme fealty. And so we saw them go through every single iteration, walk through into every single wall, kind of run around the House like a Roomba, and until they found a door that House Democrats opened, they finally realized that we should not shut down the government in order to deny trans service members the ability to get health care, in order to deny female service members the ability to get an abortion. And, they filed an extension for 45 days until we're back in here.
So
I'll tell you what I love about this messaging. Okay, just from a sheer, first off, for whatever reason, every single person in the administration and the leadership of the Democrats have all settled because of whatever focus group that they did. They finally settled on MAGA Republicans. And you notice she's not saying that. In fact, she is specifically addressing and critiquing that whole construct. She says the only difference, none of them are not extreme. This is an extreme party. There are no Republican moderates. The only difference between one Republican and another Republican is how much they bow down to Donald Trump. And it ranges from they just get on their knees to they literally lie themselves on the ground and allow him to walk all over them. And that's exactly what should be going on here. There shouldn't be MAGA Republicans and then the implication being that there are regular Republicans. There are no regular Republicans. They are all extreme. The only difference is some of them channel their extremeness through as close a proximity to Donald Trump as they can get. The rest of them are cutting aid for starving children.
Yeah, and it's good messaging in that sense because the Republicans have never afforded the Democrats that same courtesy to distinguish between, say, the squad, who they would say is extreme, and Nancy Pelosi. They're calling Biden a socialist. I mean, it's ridiculous. So yeah. The Democrats it would behoove them to be clear-eyed about that. But for my entire life on this planet, that has not been the case.
No, and it's not the same to my life, although what you don't get is, which we didn't have one, even 15 years ago, were any Democrats getting on a weekend cable show and talking like this and basically saying I don't like your framing and I'm going to push a better one. and here it is.
She's also been doing that on immigration, I will say. There have been a lot of messaging gaps with the way that the Biden administration has responded to Republican framing. And it's unfortunate that, like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has to take up that mantle, but it's good that she's there to do so. Because otherwise it's just a complete vacuum, and the right will fill that void. You can't just ignore them. You have to provide a counter narrative. We played that clip of her talking about how there's essentially no alternative on immigration. It's just more militants, more criminalization. What is our alternate vision? Has there been any messaging the entire time Biden's been in office about the border that hasn't just been a variation of what the right has to say?
Yeah, that's
just one example.
They say, no, we are doing it, which is like about border
Exactly.
issues.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all agree that we have to be draconian. It's just a question of, like, how draconian can we be without being, having images of our draconianness out. But nevertheless, this is good. This is good messaging, because you must extract as much of a political price as you can from this failure of the Republicans to actually run the majority in a way that is, like, in any way responsible. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in 45 days, but already you've had, like, the stress that you have created in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of workers in this country, federal workers, private workers who have got federal contracts, the inability you have for our government to function properly when it can anticipate what its budget's going to be 6 weeks from now, 7 months from now, a year from now, or whatnot. They must pay a political price. And she's out there basically just saying, one, they're all extreme ideologically. Two, it's just a question of how much they're going to, how high they're going to jump when Donald Trump says jump. And three, they don't know how to run anything. They're completely incompetent. They're bouncing around like a Roomba vacuum, she says. And it wasn't until the Democrats decided, we're going to help you out, and so that we can get the country's business going forward. That's exactly the story that should be told about these people. And it's a very easy one to sell, because it is exactly accurate.